Hello, my name is Erin Merrihew, and today I'm talking about how to stop people-pleasing. People-pleasing is any time I am doing or saying what I think somebody else wants me to. Now this is very natural because as human beings, we are wired to want to create ease and harmony and connection in our relationships. And we often think that people-pleasing is an easy way to do that. But what's hidden to us is the consequences of people-pleasing. Over time, when we guide our choices and our behaviors based on what we think other people want, we actually cut off from our own authenticity. And authenticity is one of the foundations of healthy relationships. In fact, without authenticity, we can't have real trust and genuine connection. So the more we can get out of the habit of people-pleasing and tune in with our authenticity, the stronger and more thriving our relationships will be. I want to share with you a few things that have been really helpful to me in overcoming my habit of people-pleasing. The first thing is to do a gut check. I also like the term self-connection. This is going inward to check in with my true experience. I find so often that when I'm interacting with other people, my default is to sense how they're doing and what they might want or need. And what's less intuitive, but so much more helpful, is to check in with my own experience and make sure that I'm really connected to that while I'm interacting with other people. So sometimes if I have the privacy, I'll close my eyes and I'll check in and notice, okay, where do I stand right now? But I can even do this while I'm simultaneously interacting with other people. It just requires me looking inside to gauge where I am on my yes and no spectrum. So I like to imagine that there is this spectrum inside, that in any given moment when I need to make a decision, I'm landing somewhere between yes and no. If I can get in the habit of checking in with where I land before I make an external response, I am much less likely to people please because I have a gauge on where I actually stand. The second step is to slow things down. It can be really easy to fall into this illusion that everything is urgent. Work moves really quickly these days, our society is moving at a very fast pace, and so we can internalize that and we can get kind of a sense of pressure around every decision we make. But I want you to consider that maybe not every interaction you have is actually urgent. In fact, in my experience, I would say probably 90% of the interactions I have are not urgent at all, and I could take 5 seconds or 5 minutes or 5 days or 5 weeks to make a decision. It can be helpful to have some phrases in your back pocket ready to use to help you slow conversations down, because this is not usually a natural behavior for us and it's a little bit countercultural. So some of the phrases that I like to use are things like, I'd like to take a moment to think about this, or there's a few things I'd like to consider. When do you need to hear back from me by? So start to think of some phrases that would be natural to you that you could use in those moments to slow your interactions down and buy yourself a little time to do a deeper check-in. The third step is to put your needs on the table. Now, like I said, it's really easy to focus on other people when we're interacting in our day-to-day, and we kind of lose sight of our own experience. So once you've done your gut check and you've slowed things down, this is your moment to check in with the needs that you have in the situation. If you don't already have my feelings and needs list, I will link that below, and that will give you some vocabulary to help you start to familiarize with what your needs might be in any given situation. The one thing I will add is that vulnerability helps so much when we're communicating our needs. Rather than looking at the needs list and choosing your needs and kind of rattling them off in a robotic way, it's going to get you so much further if you can actually find the vulnerability in your heart when you talk about your needs. Why are these things important to you? Why do you imagine they're important to the other person? If you can come from that place of vulnerability, it's really going to support you to have more genuine, connecting interactions. The fourth step is to practice sitting with other people's discomfort. Now, this is not a fun or an easy step, but it is so vital to being able to be authentic in our relationships. One of the things about being authentic is that we are bound to put other people in positions that bring up difficult feelings for them from time to time. This is natural. This is the way life works. We cannot sidestep or avoid pain. It's one of the parts of our human condition. So when you try to artificially protect the people in your life from feeling pain, you not only rob them of their own growth and their learning opportunities, but you also sacrifice your own authenticity, which, as you know, is one of the foundations of healthy relationship. So I want you to practice noticing your discomfort with other people's discomfort. So you can even practice when you're watching a movie or observing strangers in a cafe. When someone experiences emotional distress, what happens for you? Can you slow down and breathe in that moment? Can you remind yourself that you're okay even if this other person is in distress? The more that you strengthen that muscle, and it is a muscle which you can strengthen over time, of being with other people's discomfort and finding your ground amidst that, the more ability you will have to be authentic and honest in the moments when it matters the most. A dear friend of mine once invited me to an event she was hosting that really meant a lot to her. And when I checked in with myself, I noticed that I really wasn't up for attending this event. So I communicated that to her in the kindest way that I knew possible. And yet still, it was very upsetting for her. She experienced a lot of pain, and we had several really challenging conversations around my decision not to attend this event. It was excruciating for me. I really hated seeing her in so much pain, yet I was committed to being honest with her because I knew that in the long term, if we were going to have a solid friendship, I had to be honest with her because that authenticity was the most important ingredient of the trust in our relationship. So it wasn't easy. It was challenging for both of us, but on the other side of it, I think we both found so much growth in that experience, and the trust and strength of our relationship remained intact. All right, so the first step is to practice doing your gut check, that self-connection moment where you go inward and you gauge, where do I stand on the spectrum of yes to no? Can you acknowledge that within yourself? The second step is to slow things down. So what are some phrases that you could use at a moment's notice to slow down the pace of your interaction and buy yourself a little bit of time to really come to your genuine, authentic response? The third step is to practice putting your needs on the table. Once you've done the gut check and maybe taken some space to check in with yourself and slow the interaction down, you'll have a moment to notice, what are the needs that are important to me and how can I communicate those in a vulnerable way so that we create a mutually beneficial outcome. The fourth and final step is to practice your own ability to be with other people's discomfort and build your tolerance over time. You can practice this with the people close to you, with simply observing other people in emotional distress, and remembering to breathe and remind yourself that it's okay for other people to experience emotional distress and you are not responsible for their experience. Now I want to leave you with a closing thought. I want you to remember that your self-worth does not come from how other people perceive you. It doesn't come from whether or not they approve of you or like you. I'm saying this because this is the message that I wish I had heard that would have helped me step out of my people-pleasing behaviors. I was operating from this belief that my self-worth was dependent on how other people viewed me, and therefore I had to keep them happy and I had to make sure they liked me. And as you can imagine, that only led to resentment, inauthenticity, and a sense of loneliness in my connections. So my hope is that all of us can practice coming out of our habits of people-pleasing, standing in our authenticity, really trusting our own inherent self-worth regardless of how other people feel about us, and building strong, resilient relationships. Thank you so much for tuning in with me, and I hope to have you back soon.